The call came at 2:17 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I had been staring at the clock for nearly an hour, unable to sleep. My wife, Emily, was supposed to be at a 3-day business conference in Chicago, and the house felt unusually quiet without her. I had tried distracting myself with television, but the silence kept creeping back in, filling every corner of the room. When my phone suddenly vibrated on the nightstand, my heart jumped. Unknown number. At first I thought it might be Emily calling from a different phone, maybe because her battery had died. But something in my chest tightened as I answered. A calm, professional voice introduced himself as the head of security from the hotel where my wife was staying. In that moment, the world seemed to slow down. He explained that my wife had listed me as her emergency contact. Something unusual had happened, and they believed it would be best if I knew immediately. My stomach dropped. Before we go any further, take a moment to like the video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this. Your support helps these stories reach people who need them most. I remember sitting up in bed, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers hurt. The security officer spoke carefully, choosing his words in a way that made the silence between them even heavier. Earlier that night, there had been an incident involving my wife. No, she wasn't hurt, but there had been a disturbance on her floor, and her name had come up during the investigation. He couldn't share every detail over the phone, but he suggested that, if possible, I should come to the hotel in the morning. I thanked him and hung up. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the dark ceiling, trying to understand what I had just heard. Emily wasn't the kind of person who caused disturbances. She was quiet, thoughtful, and almost painfully responsible. We had been married for 9 years, and in all that time she had never been involved in anything remotely dramatic. So what could possibly have happened? By morning, my mind had created 100 different scenarios, none of them comforting. I booked the earliest flight I could find and arrived in Chicago just after noon. The city looked exactly the way it always did. Busy streets, tall buildings, people moving quickly through their lives, but everything felt distant, like I was watching the world through glass. When I reached the hotel, a tall man in a dark suit greeted me in the lobby and introduced himself as Daniel, the head of security who had called me. He had the calm presence of someone used to handling difficult situations. We sat in a quiet office behind the front desk, and he began explaining what had happened. Around midnight, a guest on Emily's floor had reported loud noises coming from one of the rooms down the hall. Security had been called to investigate. What they found wasn't a party or a fight, it was a young woman crying in the hallway. The woman had been sitting against the wall near Emily's door, shaking and barely able to speak. When security asked what was wrong, she told them she had nowhere else to go. At first, they thought she might be intoxicated or confused, but as they spoke with her longer, they realized something more serious was happening. She had just escaped from a dangerous situation. The woman had come to the conference hotel hoping to find help, but she didn't know anyone there. And somehow, she had ended up knocking on Emily's door. Daniel paused before continuing, watching my reaction. According to him, Emily had opened the door and immediately understood something was wrong. Without hesitation, she invited the woman inside. She gave her water, a blanket, and stayed with her while security and the police were contacted. The disturbance reported by the other guest had simply been the sound of the woman crying and Emily trying to calm her down. Daniel leaned back in his chair, but that wasn't the reason he had called me. He said something happened afterward that stayed with everyone who witnessed it. When the police arrived, the young woman became terrified. She didn't trust anyone, except Emily. For reasons no one fully understood, she refused to speak unless Emily stayed beside her. And Emily did, for hours. She sat with a stranger she had never met before, holding her hand, reassuring her, and quietly helping her find the courage to tell her story. Listening to this, I felt something shift inside my chest. The tension that had kept me awake all night slowly transformed into something else. Pride. But Daniel wasn't finished. The young woman eventually explained that she had been trapped in an abusive relationship and had finally found the courage to leave. She had no money, no family nearby, and nowhere safe to stay. When the officers asked if she had someone who could help her, she shook her head. And that was when Emily did something unexpected. She told them the woman could stay in her room, just for the night. Long enough for the authorities to arrange support services in the morning. Technically, it violated hotel policy. But Daniel said none of the staff had the heart to stop her. By the time he finished explaining everything, my eyes were stinging. Emily had always been compassionate, but hearing the full story made me realize just how far that compassion extended. Daniel smiled softly. He said he had called me not because there was a problem, but because sometimes the people closest to us deserve to know the kind of impact their loved ones have on strangers. He said that in his 15 years working security he had seen plenty of difficult nights, but he had rarely seen someone respond with the kind of quiet courage Emily showed. When I finally left his office, the weight I had carried all morning was gone. Instead, I felt something deeper: gratitude. Emily returned home 2 days later. When she walked through the front door, she looked exhausted. Not physically tired, something deeper than that. The kind of tired that comes from carrying someone else's pain for a while. We sat together on the couch, and she told me the rest of the story. The young woman had been placed in a support program and was finally safe. But what stayed with Emily the most wasn't the fear she had seen that night. It was the moment the woman finally smiled before leaving the hotel. A small, fragile smile that said hope was still possible. Emily told me she hadn't done anything extraordinary. She had simply opened a door when someone knocked. But sometimes, that's all it takes. A door, a moment of kindness, a reminder that not everyone in the world will turn away. Years from now, the young woman may forget the name of the hotel, the exact date, or even the conference happening that weekend. But she will probably remember the stranger who chose compassion instead of hesitation. And maybe, one day, she will pass that same kindness on to someone else. Before we reach the end of this story, I have a small request for you. In the comments, write the word kindness if you believe a single act of compassion can change someone's life. Because stories like this remind us that even in a world filled with noise and chaos, small moments of humanity still exist, and they matter more than we realize. As I watched Emily fall asleep on the couch that evening, I thought about how easy it is to overlook the quiet heroes in our lives, the ones who don't make headlines, the ones who don't expect recognition, the ones who simply choose to care. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes the world can still be kind, and subscribe to the channel so more people can hear stories like this. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about grand gestures. They're about ordinary people opening a door when someone desperately needs one.